Hi everyone. Nice to meet you. My name's Nick. I'm from Expozive. I'm going to run through a bunch of stuff. I have quite a lot of information which I want to run through. I'm going to share my screen. I think this is probably the easiest way for me to let you see what I'm doing. Okay. So what we're going to run through, I know the title says is marketing a poker game. Unfortunately, I can't see your questions, but I will get to them at the end. So basically, what I want to do is put a bit of perspective on some of the stuff. About Expozive, we're a digital marketing company, a Marcom company. So we do everything from content to outsource work in the market. Basically, when we think about marketing, what I'm trying to get across, the lesson I'm trying to get across is that when we play games like poker, we tend to be analytical. We tend to be observant. We tend to make a plan. We tend to be creative in the way that we execute, and we learn to think fast, act fast, and be flexible. If we apply these same strategies that we apply when we are playing a game to the world at large in business and marketing, you'll actually see that the results will become a lot better. I mean, we should be applying these things on a daily basis. Look at playing poker. Usually, when you sit down at the table, one of the rules they say is don't play a hand for the first 10 hands. Observe, see who's around, who's doing what. So I'm going to give you the names of the players right now. Right now, we're talking about, in most gaming markets, regulation and compliance. So meeting standards set by each state. Sometimes called internally on the compliance side, the Department of Business Prevention. We have another big player, which is our media, which is Google, Facebook, payments, our outside influences. Actually, they have more power than regulators and are far less accountable. We also have our audiences, our new audiences, and especially I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about the millennials, and as they're fast becoming a very appropriate market. And we have our challenged audiences and meet the audience's needs. So again, when you sit down at a game, you normally, especially in poker, you map what your end goal is if you want to be successful. In poker, there's two ways of thinking about it. It's win versus profit. So, for example, if you want to win a tournament, you need to amass a number, your stack. So you need to be competitive when you get to the final table. Anyone who will probably agree right here. It means taking a little bit more risk. And taking more chips, and it has a higher risk. The second one is to say, I just want to make profit, which means I just want to hit one of the paying places, and I'll take whatever profit I can get, in which case your strategy is going to be far more conservative. And it's a very simple way of putting this into a business term, which is to say, how do I see the end game of my business? Am I going to sell it, or am I going to keep it? So if your end target is to say, I want to sell my business, you need to sell a story, which means that you need to purchase market share. And it means you should be risking a much higher effective CPA. If you want to keep your company for the long term, you're going to be running a much tighter ship, and you're going to be looking at a much stricter ECPA or effective CPA, cost per acquisition. And it's going to be based on more cash flow and profit. We then look at the homework side, which is look, listen, and ask. So we look at historical data, look at data from similar markets, simulations, run projects. You can use tools. A good tool, for example, is a Google Keyword Planner, where you can see what kind of exposure you get. But then each market will have its own set defined rules and data that you need to look at. You need to map the players and make a plan for each player. So competitors, operators, who they are, what they're doing, the regulator, what you need to comply, what the costs are, not just tax. There's also your internal costs, like how much it's going to cost you to actually do the administration work around it, what restrictions you have, whether it's restrictions, messaging restrictions, uh, deposit restrictions, everything that you can imagine. You need to map out and play for and plan for. You need to look at your acquisition sources, what's available. Your media channels might not be the same in every single market. Google is available in most markets that are regulated, not all. Facebook, some, not all. Local social media, local search engines, for example, in the Far East, Baidu. In some of the Eastern Bloc countries, Yandex. You need to find out who the affiliates are, who the players are, who the real affiliates are in the market. And you need to figure out how you're going to do the payments. And it's not just about payments, like money in, like how you're going to take deposits. You need to be able to realize how you're going to pay the money out. And this is usually some of the pitfalls that people forget about. Then you're really ready to like prepare for your launch. Okay, so when we talk about like the Holy Trinity, what we're talking about is usually we're talking about like a Trinity partnership between the operator, the regulator, and the consumer, where each one has a benefit that they're looking for from the other. So as far as the operators, the regulators concerned, they're usually based on tax and revenues for the government. The regulator sells this to the consumer as they're getting consumer protection. In some cases, like in Italy, the money is directly accountable from social projects. And then between the operator and the consumer is obviously the offer. We have two external players that put pressure directly on the operator and can actually like interrupt this trinity. One is payments. So anyone who's been working in a market that realizes like how difficult it is to get payment methods up, regulations with credit cards, for example, they would understand what I'm talking about. Also, media and social media. For example, Google and Facebook decided by themselves that they were going to ban all cryptocurrency advertising. No one could do anything about it. That's just the rules they make. And they are unaccountable to anyone. So it's very important to try and, as the operator, build out in the other ways, which is to build your reputation as a solid reputation so that you're able to have a dialogue with the media, the social media, and the payment methods in your local market. I hope everyone's with me still. I'll check back to see if there's any questions before we're looking out. Okay, so far so good. I'm going to go back to the presentation. So again, here's some examples of where markets got it wrong. You know how the UK gaming market got it wrong. Basically, you know, gambling addiction became a focus of politicians and news media. It became a bargaining chip, basically, and a way for politicians to further themselves and for news media outlets to further themselves as well. Pressure was placed on the Gambling Commission. Proposed credit card restrictions were put up. And the actual Gambling Commission reached out to the UK and to speak up first before they put anything in place. There was no single voice at that point to come forward. And the result basically was that credit cards were banned in the UK. Another example of where industries have got it wrong was with crypto. In the early days, there were some less profitable ICOs or initial coin offerings. Not to pass dispersions on any ICO, but there were some dodgy offerings out there. The crypto community itself didn't react in any way or self-regulate or have a voice. Pressure was put on Canada by their financial commission. And what happened was Canada then started to lean on Google, and basically what it led to in the end was blanket crypto bans on Google, Facebook, and Twitter without any recourse whatsoever. I mean, so that's where those are examples of where an industry didn't get together and speak up. So one of the biggest advice I have, like for any new or emerging market, is to say right from the start, make sure the operators start to band together and have a voice. And for those who don't, like in the UK, which have now got their act together and started to speak up as a single voice. You can see the benefits. So let's talk a little bit more about the background on marketing and the theory, basically, because this will have some effect on some of the case studies I'll give you a little bit later. When we talk about like a flow, so basically the way I look at it is that you have a harvesting section, which means you're trying to bring as much traffic to some kind of real estate that you have. Real estate, I mean your website, in order to tag those users, so that you can then remarket to those users again and again and again, or as much as you can, and then try and get information so that you can start marketing automation, like automated chat, email, SMS, WhatsApp messages, to drive higher conversion. So ways to drive traffic towards your site is obviously organic, keywords, search engines, social media, organic social media, social ads, which are ads on Facebook and Twitter, for example. Twitter is immensely important in the UK. Facebook fairly globally. The chances of direct conversion are very low from both those channels, but the chances of bringing them to your web page and being able to remarket and then convert from the remarketing is very high. Keywords on Google and other search engines. Customer affinity groups is another way. If anyone's unfamiliar with that tool on Google, I'll be happy to share that afterwards. I think it's a little bit too much of an explanation right now. And native advertising, this is stuff like Taboola, where you have sponsored content on media sites. Again, what we're looking at is bringing people to the site, remarketing to turn them into a lead, using the sales process, and doing some marketing automation in the background, and then once you've got the conversion, to try and do some upsales. So here we're going to look at some of the applications of the marketing principles. So when we talk about the analytical side, we look at segmentation, we look at messaging and ads, we look at content marketing, and we look at some results. Let's talk about segmentation first. So I'm going to give this example. It's a very broad example. And I'll explain how this all fits together afterwards. So basically, there's a mathematical formula that works. That if you're looking at, for example, buying a bag of mixed nuts to eat, and each nut has a different price. You can either buy them each one in particular or separately, or you can buy them as a mix. Usually when you buy them as a mix, either you get charged an average price, or you get charged the highest price. I can tell you that the search engines usually charge the highest price, for example, on the keywords as you're running through. Even if they charge on the middle, what you're seeing is that if you buy each one separately, you'll actually pay less in the long run than if you bought them all together. So how does this translate? Into Google. So basically, like if we took the segmentation, instead of talking about nuts and peanuts and cashew nuts, we talked about segmenting by geographical. So by country, you can also segment by district, so more relevant districts as opposed to less relevant ones, or even down to city. So for example, there's some cities in Southeast Asia that you want to target just the city and not the entire country, in order to have some control over your spend. You can look at the keyword groups and the relevant ad copy, display groups, and where you're harvesting the retargeting groups. So I've taken an example here actually from Forex. The biggest I've used this one in particular because it's much easier to show, because there's only one real platform provider there. So there's high keyword bidding on MT4, MT5, which is the provider there. And what you can see is if I took the budget and split it out into the different, even just between the English speaking countries, that I can get somewhere around, a slightly higher average click-through rate, and pay less overall. So if we look at like once, if I took the average and then I spread them out, you can see that I've actually increased the average click-through rate by 11%. My average CPC, cost per click, is down 25%. The max cost per click that I'm paying is down 27%, and my overall budget is decreased by 17%. When you're talking about spending tens of thousands of dollars, euros, pounds, you can actually see how this could actually give you much better reach. So the question normally people ask me is, why doesn't everyone do this? Well, obviously there's a lot more administration involved. I mean, you're having to run through a number of groups rather than just a single large block. But your sweat equity is what pays off as far as costs in the long run. When we're looking at messaging, you have to make sure that the ad that you place and the keyword you're running after makes sense. Like when you talk about the advert that comes afterwards. So again, I've gone back to Forex because it's very easy to look at. If I searched for MT5 on Google, this is actually in the UK, and I have a look at the results that come up on the ads, you can actually see the two ads. I've actually like blurred out the operators for their for this purpose, but you can see like the top ad actually at least says MT5, and the second one actually does say MT4 rather than MT5. So it's important that you try and blend that too. And then when you take someone back, you can actually see that the landing page needs to actually fit the keyword you're looking at as well. So I mean, the top one brought you to a page that talked about MT5, spoke about MT5, the search was for MT5, but the second one spoke about MT4 and brings you to some page that's not related at all to anything, not MT4 or MT5. Content marketing. When we talk about content marketing, usually it's talking about like how you can measure the ROI. So, people say, I'm producing content. There's no way I can measure what the effect is. Actually, you can. If you're working in marketing and you're a marketing person, you need this to be able to fight for your budget. If you're a CEO, you actually need to know what's going on and where your money's going. So I think it's very important to go through this as well. Need to always benchmark. So basically what you're looking at from content is obviously there's online, your online site and your online blog. There's also offsite. So these are other places that will take your content, either by paying or not by paying. Native advertising, which again, I'll go back to, is stuff like Taboola, which is the sponsored influencers, even some of your affiliates, PR, social media posts, articles, and interviews. When you're looking at measuring, what you should see is an overall increase in the number of visitors. You should see an increase in direct, if you're looking at Google Analytics, for example, increase in direct visitors, organic, social, and referrals. These are the areas that are coming from your content. You should see an increase in your retargeting pool. You should see an increase overall in the number of your leads. You should see, from the branding perspective, a higher ranking on the search engine, a higher SERP, which would lead to more visitors. The higher you rank, the more visitors you get. You should see an increase in brand trust, recognition, and authority. That translates to an increase in your click-through rate, and that also into an increase in your conversion percentage. I want to take a little bit of time and talk about the millennials and how to crack this new market in particular. They're very foreign to most of us. They have very different habits. We're talking about the age group between 25 and 40 today, which should be right on the spot of the new audience we're looking at today. I mean, one example I've put out here is that that only 42% of millennials watch scheduled programming on TV. So when we look at those compared to Generation Z, so I'm going to explain the difference between the two. So obviously we spoke about millennials who were born between 1980 and 1995, which puts them between 25 and 40-year-old. Generation Z are the guys who are under 25, who were born from 1995 onwards. Again, they're going to be the secondary new generation coming through to gaming. So it's important to understand what they're looking at. They're both looking for value and experience. So this is where people talk about experiential marketing. Experiential marketing means giving someone an experience above and beyond like just a click. They're looking for entertainment, they're looking for some skill, and they're looking for peer competition. You can see that the millennials grew up during, obviously online, but during relative economic stability, and the Generation Z grew up within a period of economic recession. Each one of them has, for different reasons, a motivation to look for value for money. They're not easily parted with the money that they're looking at. Just for fun, I can show you neither what they've never seen. Millennials have never seen a floppy disk, and the Generation Z never seen a flip phone. When you look at how much screen time they get, basically we're looking at 14.8 hours a week for the millennials and 13.2 hours a week for the Generation Z. The millennials generally look at 2 screens per day, which means that they flip between their desktop and mobile, or tablet and desktop. The Generation Z will look at up to 5 screens at one time. Although both are consuming less scheduling program, there's actually like a rise in TV and radio advertising, which seems counterintuitive, but this is because there's a rise in VOD, in video on demand, and online, which means that you can use traditional styles of online media to reach these guys. Bear in mind that most of them are using pop-up blockers and ad blockers. So embedding your ads within the programming, the stream, product placements are becoming more and more important. As far as the content type, both of the consuming, again, millennials looking at mobile content, blogs, podcasts, videos. And the Generation Z more short videos, video on demand, GIFs and images. Both are looking at social media, different channels for each one. There's already well known that Facebook is for older people, and Instagram, for example, for younger. Social media stories have become more and more important. Product placement key, influencers key. It's not talking about like big stars either. We talk like the micro and nano, the guys with 1,000 or 10,000 followers. What they're looking for is trust, and they're looking at research. Most of these guys, you have to remember, like when they look at the possibility of buying their first property, in most countries it looks completely out of reach, which is why they're so careful with their money and why they want to have that feeling of value. So you need to be able to create that. Some of it can be created with competition. So create some kind of competition element. Sports betting can be leveraged because there's some level of skill. One of the things that this coronavirus has taught us in general is how to think like millennials and Generation Z, because I mean, we've seen a rise in, for example, poker and bingo, because they are essentially skill and social based, and I think this is a good lesson to carry forward. I'm going to run through a couple of results really quickly. I'm going to make this entire presentation available, so you can each see. You can all download this. I'll make sure this is available to everyone. So basically, when I looked at a project that involved segmentation and content, we saw a decrease cost per lead of 41% over 2 years, decrease effective CPA cost by 44%, increased lead relevancy by 109%. This was using social media, native media, Google and Baidu. This was also looking at obviously China as well. It was optimization of all campaigns and geos. So, for example, when we were looking at Malaysia, for example, we cut down to one city for advertising rather than a blanket one over the country. The same in Indonesia, which we eventually cut completely and left to organic. Implementation of new strategies, which included using tools like custom affinity to target competitor traffic, and combined strategy with content to improve the cost, the CTR, the click-through rates, and the conversion rate. You facing given a budget of £150,000. Sorry, I was given a budget of £40,000 a month for a brand new brand to reach £150,000 in gross profit in a single month by month 4. This was achieved, and it was achieved by really focusing down onto a targeted profile base, and basically spending the money like trying to take a small segment rather than the whole market. And again, it was a creative blend of using advertising, digital and offline, in this case, events and PR, which created the kind of experience and kind of like a feeling, a brand that people could identify with. Value chain. So value chain, let me explain really quickly, is to offer something for like free that has a value. For example, a course, an ebook, which is in ebooks have started to become a little bit old hat. And then to do a conversion as a second rate. Again, we saw high increases in profit, in conversion, monthly retention, and decrease in bonus spends. Again, using the value chain, we could see that we got first time deposit conversions down by 32%. We increased second month returning new. So these are guys who are coming back after 30 days by 75%, increased new player value by 170%, increased lifetime value by 63%. Again, I'm happy to share this information offline with anyone who needs it. My contact details are here. I'm going to switch this off for a second. Anyone who wants to take a shot of this screen, welcome to do so. If not, let me go off. Okay, so I'm back. You can back looking at me. So yeah, I'm definitely going to say it. Thanks for the comment, Justine. I love it as well. It's my baby, the artwork. I'm open to questions. As you can see, I'm looking at my camera's on this screen and the questions are on that screen. So I'm looking away from you guys. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to drop in the comments here my email address. And also the website. Sorry, www, obviously. I'll make sure that we share the presentation.